Now, America's been blessed with black angels throughout its history, and Jackie certainly was one. But when you think back about that we all stand on someone's shoulders, so much of what we're living through today is thanks to those who stood on the shoulders of Jackie and his family. One additional story was an interview that I was sent on about 10 years ago to talk to Desmond Tutu. And the Archbishop said that, I asked him what drew him to think so carefully and speak so eloquently about racism. He said that he often uses a word called Ubuntu, which means I am because you are. It's an African word. It's maybe hard to translate, but that gets pretty close. And I asked him, well, how did he become aware of this? And he said, well, as a little boy, he played baseball in a dusty field in South Africa. And his hero was Jackie Robinson. And every move he made and every twist and turn he used when he played baseball was because of pictures that he saw of Jackie when he'd sneak into town and see something in the newspaper or have a chance to watch a newsreel. That word all of a sudden means a lot more today because I guess we are because he was. The reason why we build a museum to Jackie, and there are very few Americans who really get to have their own museums. They're mostly politicians. Our presidents get their own museums. Oftentimes, it's someone who maybe did something special, but in some communal event, in the civil rights movement, or in creating wonderful policies for us. Some, through individual acts of courage, are recognized, and Jackie somehow did both. Jackie's both pre- and post-baseball life is equally fascinating, equally important, and really a vehicle for us. Because, once again, we need to use Jackie. We need to use his experiences, the way he navigated his life as lessons, to pass on to future generations. And maybe that's the best of what museums do. There was a time when museums were called places of hushed didactic strenuousness. In other words, they just beat you to pieces by the time you got to the door. They were quiet and they were dusty, and you had to work hard to understand the stories that they tried to tell. But that's not what this museum is going to be. This museum will be impossible to keep quiet. It's not dark. It looks out, looks south, down towards Lower Manhattan, looks east. It's open to the public. And what the public are going to see as they go through it is going to be an extraordinary range. There's some pictures here onto the wall. This is a view from the upper mezzanine looking down into the central part of the museum. And one of the things you'll notice is that the museum can look really filled up with things, but it also all can move away. We can clear the field and hold meetings and parties and venues like this one. In fact, the museum is right below us, while surrounded with extraordinary stories. Now, one of the ways the museum happened is through the architects of this place, Gensler, who did a great job here. And they're the ones really shaping the architecture downstairs so that we can come into a place that's ready to accept the photos and the media, and of course we have great media, and to produce a design with a lot of flexibility so that we can grow and have a really innovative exhibition space. So what really goes on in this museum? Well, clearly it's not a place that is going to be hard to get through. This is going to be a place really designed for everyone. We'll challenge old assumptions. We'll encourage new ways of thinking about Jackie Robinson. We'll convey the historical significance of his accomplishments, of course. But what we'll really be talking about is what it takes to be a pioneer and what it takes to be first. As I look out among you, we all have sensed what it's been to be first, I would imagine. Many of you were first in your family, or first in your class, or first on your block, or first in your neighborhood, or first at something. Jackie was first all the way through. He actually focused on it, and he lived it. I was struck when President Obama introduced his speech. Rather than saying my fellow Americans, he said my fellow citizens. Now, that's what Jackie was. Jackie was a citizen. He understood what it meant to be a good citizen. And that's in many ways what this foundation is about. Now, clearly, museums do lots of things. They conserve and they collect. They have an archive. And we'll do all of that. We'll also create a lively venue for concerts and receptions and symposiums. We'll also do something that this part of Lower Manhattan needs, which is that we'll enhance it with a first-rate a cultural facility that'll join some of the other facilities, such as Tribeca Cinema, and really enliven the whole neighborhood, which is really a special gift. The goal here is to employ a lot of presentation strategies, make it rich and varied, get kids learning and working together, not standing in front of the cash machine type exhibit where you stand there and kind of push buttons, but participate with other kids in the room to really learn about things, to encourage them to interact, to use hands-on learning techniques, and to also facilitate a discussion. We have a wonderful theater space that'll show programs in the evening, that'll have programs going on during the day. We can show videos and films. It holds about two busloads of kids. Wouldn't it be nice to take a short bus ride and come here for this experience, kind of feel more at home, and understand that the values of sports are really values that are shared deeply within our culture. They're values of collaboration. They're values of being selfless when you go out there to play. They're values of respecting the rules. They're values of honesty and integrity. All those values that really make up what we really want to extend to our kids. It'll be fun to look at the stats, but it'll be a lot better to really know what it means to be a good sportsman. Now, the centerpiece of the museum is this big, grand, circular space, which can become filled with exhibits. You can see it right there, or it'll become a place for parties. We won't shy away from the truth of our history. We'll tell it like it is, because we've got to be authentic. And if anything, Jackie was authentic. And if anything, a museum about him has to be authentic. We also want to be sure that we have a great bookshop. We want to be sure that museum visitors, people who come in off the street, can walk out with something that isn't just about baseball, but about why we are who we are. Because that's what museums do. They show the best picture of ourselves to others, to tourists, to our kids. We'll have multi-purpose rooms. We'll have just all of the normal features that any proper museum will have. We'll have a temporary exhibit space. We'll be able to not only podcast and uplink, but anybody walking by the front door will see a little phone number, and if they call it, they're going to find out what's in the museum, even if the doors aren't open. They'll learn facts about Jackie's life, so that everyone, and we all have a cell phone in our pocket, has instant access. All you have to do is remember that phone number, and you'll learn something about this museum. Now, thanks to Rachel, we have an extraordinary photo collection. We have an extraordinary story to tell, stories that I bet even you who know this foundation really well and know Rachel really well, hopefully you haven't heard before. Because what's embedded in that family's story are the lessons that can drive us all to be better parents, to think more carefully about our children, and to learn the lessons of working together to a common goal. Well, I can go on and talk a lot more, and you've just heard actually some terrific stories, but I do want to hope that I'll see you all on opening day. I keep thinking about that one scene that struck me. I lived near Ebbets Field and grew up with Jackie. He was a personal hero of mine. But I want you all to remember the moment when Pee Wee Reese put his arm around Jackie's shoulder and I want you to put your arm around this foundation's shoulder and make sure that we get this museum built, because this is its moment. This is the perfect time for a museum devoted to Jack Roosevelt Robinson. Thank you.